The story of Pontius Pilate is one of the most unsettling and psychologically complex narratives in biblical history. It is not merely a religious episode tied to the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, but a deeply human story about power, fear, responsibility, and the cost of moral hesitation. Pilate stands at the intersection of politics and conscience, authority and weakness, history and eternity. His decisions, made under immense pressure, echo far beyond the walls of his judgment hall and continue to provoke debate, reflection, and moral inquiry centuries later. Pontius Pilate is remembered not for what he built, conquered, or governed, but for a moment a single decision that defined his legacy forever. He was the Roman governor who authorized the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth, a man he openly declared innocent. The image of Pilate washing his hands before a restless crowd has become one of the most powerful symbols of moral evasion in human history. It represents a man attempting to distance himself from guilt while still allowing injustice to unfold. In this video, we explore who Pontius Pilate truly was, how he rose to power, the political and religious tensions that shaped his choices, why he surrendered to the crowd, and what ultimately became of him. This is not simply a retelling of biblical events, but an examination of the human condition, how fear of loss, pressure from society, and the desire to protect one's position can lead even powerful individuals to betray their own conscience. Stay with this story until the end, because the fate of Pontius Pilate is far more tragic, mysterious, and thought-provoking than most people realize. But before we begin, take a moment to support the channel by liking this video and subscribing. It helps ensure that these in-depth explorations of biblical history and human psychology continue to reach more people. Now, let us begin by understanding the world Pilate governed. When the Roman Empire took control of Judea in 63 BCE, it inherited far more than land. It inherited a people fiercely devoted to their God, their laws, and their identity. Roman rule was efficient, powerful, and merciless when challenged, but it was also deeply incompatible with Jewish religious life. Rome tolerated many religions, but Judaism was not just a set of rituals. It was a way of life governed by divine law. The Jews believed they were bound by a sacred covenant with one God, a belief that stood in stark contrast to Rome's polytheistic worldview. Roman officials swore loyalty to emperors who were often worshipped as divine figures. To many Jews, this was blasphemy. The cultural tension between Roman authority and Jewish faith was not a minor inconvenience. It was a constant source of unrest. Taxes imposed by Rome further inflamed resentment. Judea was required to fund the empire's vast military and administrative machinery, placing enormous financial strain on an already struggling population. Roman symbols, standards, and statues, often bearing images of emperors, were deeply offensive to Jewish law, which forbade graven images. Even small gestures by Roman officials could ignite mass outrage. Ef alt text. This was the environment into which Pontius Pilate stepped when he was appointed prefect of Judea around 26 CE. Pilate belonged to the Roman equestrian class, a tier below the elite senatorial families, but still part of Rome's ruling structure. Little is known about his early life, but it is likely he was born in Italy and raised within the disciplined culture of Roman administration. Advancement in Roman society depended not only on competence, but on loyalty, political alliances, and the ability to maintain order. Pilate's appointment to Judea was not glamorous. It was a difficult province known for resistance, religious fervor, and frequent unrest. As prefect, Pilate was responsible for maintaining peace, collecting taxes, enforcing Roman law, and suppressing rebellion. He commanded Roman troops and held the authority to impose capital punishment. Yet Pilate did not govern alone. He shared limited power with the Jewish Sanhedrin, the council of religious leaders who oversaw internal Jewish affairs. This delicate balance required diplomacy, cultural sensitivity, and restraint, qualities Pilate would repeatedly struggle to demonstrate. Historical sources outside the Bible, including Jewish philosopher Philo and historian Josephus, describe Pilate as harsh, inflexible, and often provocative. He was known to disregard Jewish customs and use brute force to assert Roman authority. On several occasions, his actions sparked protests and violence. Pilate's rule was marked by tension long before Jesus entered the scene. By the time Jesus of Nazareth was arrested, Judea was a powder keg. Messianic expectations were high. Many Jews believed a deliverer would arise to overthrow Roman rule. Rome watched such movements closely, crushing anything that hinted at rebellion. Jesus, however, was not leading an armed revolt. His message was spiritual, moral, and deeply unsettling to religious elites. He challenged authority not with weapons, but with truth. To the religious leaders, he was dangerous, not because he threatened Rome, but because he threatened their control. When Jesus was brought before Pilate, the governor found himself in an impossible position. According to the gospel accounts, Pilate interrogated Jesus and found no evidence that he posed a political threat. Jesus spoke of a kingdom not of this world. He did not incite rebellion or encourage refusal to pay taxes. Pilate recognized that the accusations against him were rooted in envy and fear, not treason. Yet Pilate also understood the volatility of the crowd and the influence of the religious leaders. Jerusalem was filled with pilgrims for Passover, a time already charged with nationalist sentiment. Any disturbance could escalate into a riot, and Rome would hold Pilate responsible. Pilate attempted to avoid making a decision. He sent Jesus to Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee, hoping to shift responsibility. Herod mocked Jesus and sent him back. The burden returned to Pilate's hands. In the Gospel of John, Pilate engages in a philosophical exchange with Jesus, asking the haunting question, "What is truth?" It is a moment that reveals Pilate's inner conflict. He stood face to face with a man who spoke with calm authority, yet Pilate could not grasp or perhaps feared the implications of what he heard. Despite declaring Jesus innocent multiple times, Pilate lacked the courage to release him outright. Instead, he turned to a Passover custom that allowed a prisoner to be freed at the crowd's request. He offered them a choice, Jesus or Barabbas. Barabbas was a known criminal, involved in violence and insurrection. By any rational standard, Jesus should have been the obvious choice. Yet the crowd, stirred by religious leaders, demanded Barabbas. This moment exposes the terrifying power of collective pressure. Pilate, the representative of Rome, allowed the crowd to dictate justice. As tension mounted, Pilate received a message from his wife, traditionally named Claudia Procula. She warned him not to harm Jesus, saying she had suffered greatly in a dream because of him. Dreams were taken seriously in Roman culture, and this warning should have strengthened Pilate's resolve. Instead, it increased his fear. Faced with the threat of unrest and accusations of disloyalty to Caesar, Pilate chose self-preservation over justice. He symbolically washed his hands before the crowd, declaring himself innocent of Jesus' blood. But history would not accept this gesture. By authorizing the crucifixion, Pilate exercised the very power he claimed to reject. Washing his hands did not remove responsibility, it confirmed it. The cross stood as a testament not only to human cruelty, but to the consequences of moral compromise. After the crucifixion, Pilate's role in the biblical narrative ends, but his life did not. He continued to govern Judea, and historical records suggest his behavior grew increasingly brutal. He ordered the execution of Galileans in the temple, and violently suppressed Samaritan gatherings. These actions eventually provoked formal complaints to Roman authorities. Around 36 or 37 CE, Pilate was recalled to Rome to answer for his conduct. By the time he arrived, Emperor Tiberius had died, and power had passed to Caligula. What happened next is uncertain. Some early Christian writers claimed Pilate was exiled and later took his own life, consumed by guilt and disgrace. Others suggest he lived out his days in obscurity, stripped of authority and forgotten by the empire he served. Historians debate these accounts, as evidence is limited and often shaped by theological motives. What remains certain is that Pilate never regained power. His career ended not with honor, but with silence. Pontius Pilate's legacy is not defined by a verdict, but by a failure to act when it mattered most. He is remembered as a man who recognized truth yet surrendered to fear, a man who held power yet lacked courage, a man who tried to escape responsibility and instead became a symbol of moral weakness. His story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. How often do we know what is right, yet choose what is safe? How often do we allow pressure, reputation, or fear to override conscience? And when we attempt to wash our hands of difficult choices, do we truly escape their consequences? The tale of Pontius Pilate endures because it reflects the human struggle between integrity and self-preservation. It reminds us that neutrality in the face of injustice is itself a decision, and one that history does not forget. If you found this exploration meaningful, share your thoughts in the comments. Was Pilate a villain, a coward, or a tragic figure trapped by his circumstances? Like, share, and subscribe for more deep explorations into biblical history and the timeless lessons it offers. Thank you for watching.